Hello there and welcome to Techopia. Thank you very much for joining us yet again. We are excited because today is a very special VIP session on Techopia. We are excited because we're sitting down here with the Senior Vice President of Data Science and Engineering, David Lenny from Shopify. Thank you so much for taking the time for us today.
Sure, thanks for having me. It's like a VIP experience for me as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We practice this in advance.
Right,
so
of course.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah. I know your schedule is busy, but I'm so happy that you sat down here with us because, you know, it would not make any sense if we had all these phenomenal companies and CEOs and executives within our city to talk about what's happening in artificial intelligence and data science in general if we didn't have the cream of the crop, the top company within our city, and also, you know, making, of course, waves across the globe to tell us a little bit more where things are at for you specifically as a company as well, and get your insight on it as well.
Sure.
As you already know, you continue to empower merchants. The value of AI and data, of course, cannot be ignored, especially when it comes to e-commerce in general. So I have a few questions for you today, and let's hear a little bit your feedback. I'm going to start off with, in what big ways is Shopify using data and analytics today, even more so than, when you just started off and really kind of got into the game?
Sure. I think that the best way to think about how we use data and analytics and like machine learning and artificial intelligence here is we want to use data to reduce the sort of costs and the time required for entrepreneurs to launch and build successful businesses. And that takes a whole bunch of different forms. One good example would be we have a product called Shopify Capital. And the way Shopify Capital originated was a lot of our entrepreneurs were telling us that they would hit a certain stage of growth and they would realize that if they had just a little bit more working capital, they could order slightly more inventory and build a slightly bigger business. But they're sort of stuck in these existential places where they didn't have the capital, so they couldn't grow to the next level. And we said, gosh, what if we were to offer that to them? Because we really want to help them grow as much as possible. Because when the entrepreneurs succeed at Shopify, we succeed. So our success is predicated on theirs. And so with Capital, what we did is we used data to predict who should receive an offer of sort of a cash advance from us and how much should we offer them. And this is an incredibly labor-intensive process if we were doing this by hand. In fact, for the first 6 to 12 months, we did that by hand just to learn how it all worked. And we eventually switched it all over to machine learning. And we would run this once a month, and just to give you an idea of the big gains we have from machine learning, running that process once a month for us would take 44,000 minutes of time just once through for a human. So we would need a staff of 25 to 30 people doing nothing but that once a week, every month. We can do that now in 40 minutes with our very first algorithm, which means, importantly, that we get huge scale effects, but also we can get faster and faster at identifying an entrepreneur who needs that extra boost to help them get to the next level and won't have to wait for a month to do that work.
Oh, that's spectacular. Now, it's interesting because that obviously has provided you with some insights, and you've now obviously passed it on into various other ways as well as you're using it. So what insights can big data offer to merchants on the Shopify platform? So how can they utilize that?
Yeah, really, you should think about, or the way I like to think about this is when someone's starting a business, and I like to think of them having sort of like a bucket that is filled with dollars to spend creating and running their business, as well as time that they have to spend. Because for lots of people, this is something that maybe they launch on the side, but they have a full-time job, and they don't have unlimited resources to do this. And if their bucket is ever empty, it runs out of minutes and dollars to spend, their business is gone. And the problem is that it's leaking in all sorts of ways, because every moment you make a decision in a business is an opportunity to make the wrong choice. And so that's where my team leverages data to try to identify as quickly as possible the biggest sources of leak and or leakage, and then either plug them completely or replenish them faster than your bleeding minutes or bleeding dollars, so that you live to sell another day. And so really you could think about anywhere that there's lost minutes and lost dollars where we're adding value. Another practical example is we built our own fraud algorithm for order fraud. And order fraud is all the orders going through a Shopify shop. If you accept a fraudulent order, you're going to maybe ship inventory to somebody, and then days or weeks later, there's a chargeback and a dispute. You've already lost the inventory. You don't actually get the payment, and this small entrepreneur lost that money. And that very well could make the difference between sort of living or dying in your business. And our job, when we built this algorithm, was to give them as much of those lost dollars back. And in our very first version of this, we reduced the false positive rate of our original model by more than 85%, and that was us identifying what are the real sales that they should say yes to. But also importantly, we increased our true positive rate, which is our ability to detect real fraud, by more than 10%. And so what that really means is that all of the merchants on Shopify are getting more accurate risk guidance than ever before, and they can say yes confidently to the right sales.
That's amazing. So now we've spoken a little bit how you're using data science. We spoke a little bit how the merchants are using it. Let's think about the consumers, because obviously that's the key aspect as well. How do you think, once again, the way we are applying that information and gathering all this data, how is that changing the way people shop, consumers are using the platform?
Yeah, I think actually that metaphor of the sort of the lost dollars and the lost minutes is still a very useful one, because if we do our jobs, my team does, if we do our jobs very, very well, you may not even know that we're doing them. Like, our goal is to help a merchant or a merchant's consumer find exactly the right option, maybe find the right product with as little extra searching as needed. You want a great recommendation algorithm that gets you to exactly the right piece of information at the right moment. And it could also help a consumer find the cheapest alternative. Like, if there's a way for them to save dollars, then all those dollars go into more purchasing in our perspective. So I think in very much the way we have saved dollars and time for merchants, we're doing the same kind of work for consumers.
Mm-hmm. Now, artificial intelligence obviously is a growing sector, not just for us locally, but globally, of course. But we have some great companies here in Ottawa, including yourself, obviously, looking for that talent associated with that as well.
Right.
How is that going, and how's the talent pool out there? What are we trying to do to get people here? What's your next step in finding the right people to really fill that gap and that need?
Yeah, so I actually moved here from Silicon Valley, and I've been competing for talent all the time. Tech, it's always hard to find great talent. And absolutely, I'd say that machine learning and AI has reached a fever pitch. Or maybe even worse, it hasn't hit the fever pitch yet. It's just going to get even more extreme. I find myself very lucky to be in Canada, because maybe a lot of people don't know this, but if you look back at the kind of evolution of the leading kind of thinkers in modern machine learning and artificial intelligence, many of them are right here in Canada. And so serendipitously, when I'm recruiting this sort of talent, I find that one of the best sort of development centers for producing this type of talent is Canada, period. So I think we're in a better position to find that talent than almost anyone else in the world. But beyond that, I think we're just as challenged as anybody at finding great talent. You're always on the hunt, and we will do everything we can to get them here.
Awesome. Now, I want to ask you this question, and it's a little bit off the consumer aspect and off maybe the merchant aspect, but kind of ties into both merchants and what you're doing as well. From a marketing perspective and a branding perspective for a consumer, or maybe even for a merchant, how is artificial intelligence changing that experience maybe? And maybe how are you including that and helping them, getting the word out there, or finding the right consumer, or helping, once again, the merchant to position their products in the right way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I might even sort of frame it a little bit more broadly to how should people in the world think about artificial intelligence, because I think there's a lot of interest, but there's also a lot of misinformation or misconception. And there's absolutely been a lot of development and evolution of this technology, but it's a far cry from the level of sophistication that people are maybe concerned about in the press. We're a long ways away from sentient robots kind of taking over the world. So I like to think of it less as artificial intelligence and more as augmented intelligence. Mm-hmm. And that the powerful ways we're leveraging this technology, both for merchants, for consumers, but really just kind of, you could expect it across industry overall, is in tackling the types of work that is repetitive, rule-based, that humans may be doing, but they probably don't want to spend all their time doing. And what we find is that by augmenting them, the technology can do that heavy lifting, which liberates them to then focus on things that only humans can uniquely focus on. So it's a lot more creative and just a lot more thoughtful work that they're able to do. So I expect that that's the development arc we will see all across industries, not only commerce, is augmenting the intelligence of people in the space.
Wonderful. So if you're watching this, we just want to remind you that I'm sitting here today with the Senior Vice President of Data Science and Engineering. I'm so glad I can remember that.
Sure. Good job.
I have a big board behind the camera that explains that.
Eventually AI will take care of that.
Exactly. I don't actually have to remember my own name. David Lenny from Shopify. David, thank you so much for sharing a little bit for us, with us at least, where this industry is going, how Shopify is implementing AI, both for merchants, consumers, and of course, how Shopify is approaching this in general. Then I'm going to ask you this question. Kind of just to finish off, I know most people say,
Great.
as you just said, it's not going to completely change things off. Or we're not going to stop using individuals and people to do what we do. But what do you see maybe the next 3-5 years look like?
Oh gosh, I think that really what's made this current stage of technical evolution possible is a lot of different pieces came together. So cloud technology, the lowering price of storing data, which you need a lot of data to make any of these applications go well. So you need the ability to cost effectively store it. So storage getting cheaper, networks getting faster, processing power getting faster and cheaper, have all converged to sort of make this modern kind of like fever pitch of AI and ML happen, even though the research and the techniques have been around for many decades, even going back to the 1940s. So what I expect to see is probably a lot more evolution of vocal UIs, because still people spend a lot of time typing or searching on their iPad mini, and we're very good at talking. And so I expect that we will move toward a world in which the technology is always on and assisting us. It's augmenting us kind of everywhere we are in our daily life, and that you will have these assistants there to do some work for you. If you, instead of pressing your recorder, you'll just ask your assistant to record.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Sure.
Both exciting and really interesting, all the information you shared with us today. Thank you so much, David.
Great.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you stay tuned to Techopia, and make sure, of course, you go check out Shopify if you have not done so already. And if you are an AI...
We're hiring.
Shopify. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye.